Here we go, Chevre. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim Daf Yud. We are in middle of the series of cases discussing for a possible second bedika. In other words, we are beginning with a house that was already searched. Thus, we have established a cheskas baduk. The bias is becheskas baduk. Something happened, and we have to analyze whether that happening has the koyach to undo the chazaka, thus obligating us to check the house yet a second time. This is a very important sugya that balances out sfeikos versus chazakos, and we are up to the third case. It's interesting that at least in the first couple of cases, the Gemara uses code words. So with the first case that we learned yesterday, wahainu teisha chanuyos, and the second case was the case of shtei kupos. And today we're going to compare the case to the case of shnei shvilin, and then to the case of bika. Then we're going to learn the rule that kol davar shebecheskas tuma la'olam hu b'tumasei achi yivadal hatuma heichanu. Then we're going to learn about a field shenevad ba kever. Then we're going to learn about a case regarding mois meiser sheni, that if you put in a box, if you put in a drawer 1 mana of mois meiser sheni, and then you find 2 mana, or in the opposite, if you leave 2 mana and you find 1 mana, what may you determine because of that? What happens if you put chametz in one corner and you find it in another corner? What's going to happen if you see a mouse with chametz in its mouth entering your home that was already searched, but then you see a mouse, it appears to you to be the same mouse, that is exiting your house with chametz in his mouth? Can you presume that the chametz that it entered with, that's the same mouse and that's the same chametz or not? What happens if it's a different colored mouse? A white mouse enters and a black mouse exits. It's phenomenal. And after one topic, then Rabbi is going to ask further inquiries. For example, what happens if you have a piece of bread that's high up in a rafter in the house? In other words, as we mentioned, that when you do bittul chametz, you already fulfilled your biblical obligation of tashbisu. The only reason why you also have to do bidikas chametz is because if you will encounter a piece of chametz, you might come to eat it, particularly since the entire year chametz is muter b'achila. What happens if chametz is in a location that it's difficult for you to get to? Do you have to search for chametz that's very high up? Do you have to search for chametz that's very low down? Do you have to search if there's chametz in the mouth of a snake? That will be the final one. Do you have to go and get that chametz? How would you get it? You would have to hire a chabar, a snake charmer, or not. And at the end of Daf Yud Amid Beis, we're going to have this. We're going to have the following Mishnah. We already quoted the Mishnah earlier on when we were trying to ascertain the meaning of the word oir in the beginning of the Masechta. We're going to learn Shitas Rabbi Yehuda. Initially, we will understand that Rabbi Yehuda holds that B'dikas Chametz has to be made 3 times: the night of Arba Asar, the morning of Arba Asar, and then during the Zman Habir. We will then clarify that that's not the meaning of Rabbi Yehuda, but indeed there is a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim as to what is the latest time for which one can do bedika if you did not do it in the ideal time. And ultimately, are you allowed to do bedikas chametz bizman isura? This will be the final understanding, and that will indeed be the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. And we will learn, God willing, a lot more. Let us start on Daf Yud Amud Aleph, the last word on the top of the 3rd line from the top of the Amud. So again, we already had the case that we compared it to the Teisha Chanuyos. We had the case that we compared it to the Shtei Kupos, and now we're going to learn the 3rd case. So again, we have a house. The house was already searched for. Becheskas baduk. And now, Tzibur Echad Shel Chametz, there's here 1 pile of Chametz. You know that it's Chametz. Ulafan of Beis Batim Bedukim, and in front of this pile, there are 2 houses that already underwent Bedikas Chametz. They are therefore Becheskas Baduk. V'asa Achbar, and now comes along a mouse, this shackle, and it takes Chametz from the pile. That's no question about that. So again, when that happens, you're not judging. There's no doubt yet. The doubt arises when the Achbar gets lost in one of the 2 houses. The moment that happens, like we explained yesterday from the Ran, that every doubt has to be resolved, or when we are using halachic criterions to resolve a doubt, what is important is to know, when did the doubt come to your attention? At that time, what was the consequence of the doubt? Here, the mouse takes chametz, there's no doubt. When it got lost in the house, the issue of a mouse with chametz in its mouth getting lost in a house is about, do you need to do bidikas chametz or not? So be mindful of that. So this is a suffix midrabanan. The question is, what is the doubt? We don't know. Ilahayo. You don't know. Every house can claim it didn't enter in me. Every house already has a cheskas baduk. It definitely did enter in one of the two houses. That's a vadai. We just don't know which one. Now, one more important premise for now, and that will also help us understand other cases as well, is that when we speak about a suffix, it's important to remember that we are not going to consistently use the same rules how to halachically resolve a suffix. We divide all of the dinim and Torah, b'negei sfeikos, into three categories. There are sfeikos concerning tuma, and there is a rule. Suffix tuma b'reshus harabim, sfeikoi tahoir. Suffix tuma b'reshus hayachid, sfeikoi tamei. Another important nuance in that, even though we just came off Shabbos and we came off Eruvin, the definition of reshus hayachid, reshus harabim, as it is used b'negei suffix tuma, is b'chlal not the way the words reshus hayachid, reshus harabim are used b'negei hilchos Shabbos. Concerning this rule that if the suffix comes about in a reshus harabim, then we are lenient, even though it's a din Torah. Suffix tamei b'reshus hayachid, only then do we say that you have to be metamei. Reshus hayachid means that the suffix happened when one or two people were present, and not more than that. In a location where three people are present, it can be privately owned. For these dinim, it's considered a reshus harabim, because the source that a suffix tamei b'reshus hayachid is tamei is from the laws of a soita. The Torah uses there the words of tamei, even though the question is whether she committed adultery or not. And it happened in private because if it happened, it was him and her and him, no other third person. That's how we define the reshus hayachid. But anyways, suffix tuma, it depends, reshus hayachid, reshus harabim. Guy suffix mamain, who knows the din? What happens if there's a doubt regarding money? So the rule is hamoitzim chaveri olav araya. That's the general rule. And whenever you have a suffix tuma b'negei isurim, which is negea to chametz amatzah, right? Dina isur v'heter. That is where we say, suffix d'oraisa l'chumra, suffix d'rabanan l'kul. Okay. Having said all that, let's go back now. Says the Gemara, how do you determine the halacha? Haynu shnei shvilin. Says we are expected to know the shnei shvilin case, which is a Mishnah in Taharos, and it's taka mamish like the case of shnei shvilin. And let's go chazer that case. Let's review that case. Ditran, we learned in Taharos, shnei shvilin, if there are two paths, two roads. And echad tamei, one is tamei, the echad toid, one is toid, which means that we know for sure that a mace, and let's go l'shitas Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So there is a yid that was buried under one of these two roads. The Jew was laid to rest going on the width of the road, which means that whoever travels on that road for sure will be mahil over the mace, will be going over the mace, one of the three types of tumas oil. All right, I'm going over the mace, I will become tummy. Now, we don't know under which road is the mace buried. And one person, let's go, went on road number one, and afterwards he was involved with food that was tahor. Maybe he became tamei, thus he's tamei, maybe his foods are tamei. We don't know that. And furthermore, and his friend went on road number two, and also v'asa taharos. One of these two people, for sure, are tamei. On the other hand, each person, if he were just to question his own status, this happens on a road. This happens in a reshus harabim. So the suffix tuma b'reshus harabim is tahor. So therefore, says the Rebbe Yehuda, if each one comes to a chacham and asks the Rav, what is my status? So then the Rav will answer each one separately, you're tahor and you're tahor. Bezdin or the Rav cannot be matama a person because of the rule, suffix tuma, the reshus harabim is tahor. However, Rabbi Yehuda continues, shneyim b'bas achas, if they both come together, and Rashi adds, and the psak din that the Rav is going to give will be one statement for both of them. In other words, they come, they ask the Rav, what is our status? And his response will either be, you're both tahir or you're both tamei. Now here, he cannot say you're both tahir, even though Safik tamei b'reshus hayachid, b'reshus harabim, sveikoi tahir. So what? He's judging both. We know for sure that one of them is tamei. So that ruins it. So he has to declare you're both tamei, tameim. Rabbi Yosi Omer, ben kach o ben kach tameim. Ben kach o ben kach tameim sounds like even if each one comes individually and they only ask the Rav concerning themselves, each one will get a psak din of Tuma, and that's not what he meant. And on that, Omar Rava, or other people say that on that came along Rabbi Yochanan, and he clarified, and he says the following: Bibas achas, was if they come together, like we learned in Nashi, they ask together, are we tahar, are we tamei? Everyone holds tameim. Now the chiddush now of Rava or Rabbi Yochanan is that if they come bozeh achar zeh, if they come one after the other, everyone will say that each one will get a psak din that they're tahar. On top of that, Rashi, 60 lines from the top of the Amid, adds a nuance, even a greater chiddush. Even if each one relates to the Rav, that there was another person on the other road, and like I made taras, he made taras. So the Rav already knows that there are two people here. Doesn't matter. If you only asked about yourself, that's called bozeh achar zeh. The Rav can answer the Uven your tar. When Shimon comes, the Rav can answer Shimon your tar, even though one of them is tamei. Doesn't matter. Each case was being ruled separately, and everyone agrees to that. If a person is coming, it's not two people saying, what is our status? Reuven is coming by himself, but Reuven is telling the Beis Din or telling the Rav, listen, I walked on road A. My friend Shimon walked on road B. Please tell me what's my status, what's his status. So over there, Rabbi Yosim the Rav now has to tell Reuven, well, now they're asking me about you and Shimon are tamei. Another very important Rashi. Hold on, how is it b'zeh achar zeh? Each one is asking concerning him. He says, what's my status and what's the other person's status? So says Rashi that if only one person is standing in front of the Rav or only one person standing in front of Beis Din, even though he mentioned, the asker told Beis Din, what's my status, what's Shimon's status, Beis Din does not have to answer to Uven what's Shimon's status. They only have to answer him what your status is. And they tell Reuven, you are tahar. They're never allowed to say you are tahar and Shimon is tahar. They can't say that. They can say you are tahar. And then they're going to tell Shimon, you are tahar. Because since they're not standing together, even though one is mentioning the other, as long as the Beis Din doesn't paskin on two, they get to tell each one you're tahar. Now hold on, Chavra. Now let's work this out over here. So I'm reading inside the Rashi. It's more or less the middle of the narrow lines. So this is mamish like our inquiry. Just like there is a rule, Safek Tuma b'reshus harabim sveikoi tar. Coming back to our topic, since the Safek did not come about before the mouse ran into the house and you didn't know what was in its mouth, then it's a Safek dinei toida to know whether it's chametz or matzah. But now that the question only began when they ran into one of the two homes, and the question is only concerning whether you have to make bidikas chametz or not, and bidikas chametz, when bittul was done, was only midrabanan, and therefore sfeikoi is also likula, so they're very similar. So really, now that we clarified the Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, I'm reading inside Rashi, the Gabe Batam Nami, each balabas asks the Rav, listen, the mouse ran into one of the houses, then you tell each one separately, no need to make a bedika. Why is that? Says Rashi, because they keep in the bedikas chametz the rabbanon to lean on lekula the amrin and sveikoi mutar. If they both come together and they ask the Beis Din or they ask the Rav, do we have to be boidik our houses again? Lekula alma, the Beis Din tells both people together, both of you have to, because for sure it entered one of these two homes. And let's just speak out. Rashi expects us to tie the last loose thread, and if each one comes by himself, even if he asks concerning his house and his friend's house, do I have to be boidik? Does my friend have to be boidik? So that is the machloekas tanoim. That is the machloekas tanoim. Whether since they asked one about the other, is it like the basachas, and therefore the Rav has to tell him, you and your friend have to do bedika again, or do we say it's like basachas? All the Rav tells one person, you don't have to do it. Don't mention anything about the other. Well, let's move on in today's second case, which is really in the Sugya's fourth case. Bachlal, it's good, whoever already has the Rashi, to keep your finger in the Rashi, because we'll be learning a lot of Rashis together. Because a lot of the Gemara just makes the analogy, the comparison, but working out is something that's done in Rashi, and especially, like always, but especially here, there's a lot of arguments between Rashi and Tosfos. Obviously, we're learning Gemara Rashi. What we're saying now is the way Rashi understands our Sugya. When I was in Cheder, my teacher taught me that God gave us two hands. The reason why we have two hands is to keep one finger in the Gemara and one finger in Rashi. And it's kedai to do so, not to lose the place. So keep your finger in Rashi. The Gemara is the fourth case. Safik ol, safik loyol. Another case. There's a house that's baduk. One house. There's one pile of vadai chametz. There's a mouse. The mouse for sure took the chametz from the pile. In the Bible, there's no suffix. If there would have been a suffix again, that would have been a suffix d'oraisa, whether it's chametz or matzah. But there is no suffix. We don't even know if the mouse entered the house. We have a doubt whether the mouse entered the house or not. Now, that's a much weaker doubt than in the case prior. In the case prior, the mouse entered the house. We just don't know which house. Here, we don't even know if it entered. That's called a weak doubt. So what is that? The Gemara says, Hainu Bika. That's the case of Bika. That's the prototype case. Now, the next words in the Gemara, Ubeplukta de Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbanan, there are some who, as we will, God willing, learn Shitas Rashi, felt that Rashi doesn't even have these words. And we'll speak out that, no, Lav Dafka, these words can be there even according to Rashi. So let me interpret it the way I understand it. And this will be like the case in which there is an argument between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. However, unlike in the first case we learned today, the Shnei Shvilin, that the halacha will be the machloikas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, if one person asks about him and about his friend's house. In our case, here, everyone will be moided to the same halacha. By Bika, there is an argument. But as we'll explain, here they won't argue. Now let's learn what is the case of Bika, what is their argument, and how do we compare it and bring it back to our case of Safek Ol, Safek Loyal. The Tanam, Nocha Mishnah and Taharis. If someone enters a very large valley, the valley has in it many fields. Now it's important, another detail, each field has identifiable borders. I'll explain why we have to say that in a moment, but it's many fields altogether. Now, during the time of the year where people walking through your field, my field, making a shortcut, if that will not damage my crops, one of we'll see Yeshua when he conquered the land and made 10 enactments for the public benefit where there isn't any private loss. One of these is that the Yemais HaChamam, I'm allowed to walk through your field. Ubemela, Lav Dafka, a field will have the status of a Reshus HaYachid. As we mentioned, the definition of a Reshus HaYachid concerning the rule, Safek Tumah B'Reshus HaRabim is Tahar. Safek Tumah B'Reshus HaYachid is Tami, is whether there are 3 people or more, it's a Reshus HaRabim. If people have permission to walk through my field, then I can consider my field a place that there were 3 people at the time of the doubt. If it's B'Mois HaGeshamim and no one has the right to walk through there, so then if someone happened to be there, the presumption is there was only you, maybe one other person. Therefore, it has now a halachic status of a Reshus HaYachid. Again, nothing to do with Hilchos Shabbos. It doesn't have to be enclosed. How many people were in that location? Okay, so first of all, you are now in a Reshus HaYachid for Dinei Tumah. And we know for sure the Tumah beside the plainest. In one of the fields, they are all separated with some sort of borders, markers. There is for sure Tumah. But you don't know whether you entered that field. So now you see it's very similar. There's Vadai Chametz here. There was a mouse here. We don't know if the mouse entered or not. It's called their Safek Bia. You don't even know if you entered. Oh. Then one person comes to a Rav and he says, listen, I went into the larger area. Now, if there weren't any borders separating one field from the other, so then you entered the field. No, since every field has its own marker, so then we still consider each field separate from the other. So I went into that general area, but I don't know. I don't know if I entered that field or not. Now, what is the rule? Like we mentioned, Safek Tuma b'Reshus HaYachid. The rule is Safek Sfeikoi Kamei. Here, Rabbi Eliezer is lenient. He considers this a very weak doubt. We don't even know if you entered. Rabbi Eliezer is Metayed, and the Chachamim are Metamim. Now, the Chachamim don't need to be explained. Safek Tamei b'Reshus HaYachid Sfeikoi Tamei. But why is Rabbi Eliezer Metayed? Shehoyer Rabbi Eliezer Oimed Safek Bia. You don't even know if you entered or not. Then you're tar. What is the scenario upon which we say if the Safek happened in the Reshus HaYachid will be Machmir? That's Safek Maga. You know you were near the Tumah. You don't know whether you touched it or not. That's different. That's worse. If you don't even know if you entered, then you're going to be Tahir. Okay, now here's the word that Rashi says over here. And Rashi, we can already begin. The Chachamim Mitamim, I'm reading inside the last narrow line in the Amid. We're going to scoot down a little bit. The Havale Safek Tumah b'Reshus HaYachid, the Rabbi Eliezer lo chashav lo Safek Tumah at all. What Safek Tumah elam came nichnas? You went in, you don't know if you went over it. Rashi calls it a Sfek. You don't know whether you entered. Even if you entered, you don't know if you were Maga. You don't know if you were Mahil, then you're Tahir. Now, bring it back to our case. Says Rashi, like the third line under the medium size, under the Gemara, in the medium size line Rashi, the Gaba Batim, here's Rashi. Afilu Rabbanan Moidi. That over here you won't have to do with the Chametz again. Why? The Chachamim don't subscribe to Safek Bia is like a real Safek. They don't subscribe to that. Shkoyach. That's because for them it's Safek Tumah b'Reshus HaYachid midoraisa. You got to be machmer. Here we're speaking about a Safek Derabanan, like we mentioned, right? Different rules. Safek by Sfeiko is concerning Dinei Isurim. If it's B'Derabanan, you got to be late Mekel. Even because Chametz Derabanan, Tolin on Lekula. You don't have to be by the house again. And now coming back, that's why when the Gemara says Ubeplukta de Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbanan, it doesn't mean that the halacha here will be also a machloikas between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan. He says it's like the case of Bika. There is a machloikas, and here there's no machloikas. We learned from Bika the concept that there are different types of sfeikos. If you want to use percentages, it works. It's much easier to grasp it. What does a doubt mean? There's a 50-50 doubt. There's an 80-20 doubt. There's a 90-10 doubt. And the less chance there's a problem, you can look at it that way. You can't say, maybe the mouse entered. Maybe the mouse entered is not a suffix that can be mavatal. The house that's becheskas baduk. Back in the Gemara, time is running, but this is so important, these sugyas. Okay, so we are in the Gemara, we are learning now the fifth case from the beginning. Olu badak, another case. You were boidek a house. You have a pile of chametz. You have a mouse. The mouse took the chametz and the mouse entered your house. No doubt about that. And now you went ahead and you searched. You went searching for the chametz. And v'lo yashkach, you found nothing. Oy gewalt. That's the worst. So now what the question is, well, maybe the mouse ate it up, which is why you found nothing. But maybe you didn't search good enough. Search nachamo. So we have a prototype for that. Again, according to Rashi, plukta de rameir v'rabanan. Other people say that according to Rashi, you don't have these words. We're going to keep the words in here, but the plukta de rameir v'rabanan, this is just to remind everyone what case we are referring to. That's the case in Nida. But as we'll see, Rashi, that here there is no machlokes rameir and rabanan. But what case are we talking about? That's the case we have in Masechtas Nida. The Tanan, Hoyer Rav Meir Oimer. There's Rav Meir Oimer and there's Hoyer Rav Meir Oimer. Hoyer Rav Meir Oimer means he continuously used to say. This was a topic that he spoke about a lot because it is a foundational topic as we can relate it now to our case. Here's the case. Kol davar shebecheskas tuma. Once there is a cheskas tuma, lo'olam hu b'tumasei achi yivad locha tuma hechani. Chachamim disagree with that and they say boidik achi magia lasela. And if you find nothing, then the tumah went away. What are we talking about? Keep your finger in the Gemara. We're also in the Gemara by the Vav to the A Mishpat. And let's go to Rashi, 5 lines under the Gemara. In the middle of the medium-sized Rashi. Guys, we quote this case various times. Here we go. Kol davar shebecheskes tuma. Says Rashi v'Masechtas Nida, the case is gal tamei. There is a mound. We know that under a mound there is tuma. However, near mound Aleph, that we knew which one is mound Aleph, and there's tuma underneath it, that means if you go over it, you're going to become tamei, tumas oil. There are two other mounds, Mount Beis, Mount Gimel, and all of a sudden, shenesarevim shnei galam tohirim. Mitamol, you don't know which one of the three has tuma underneath it. You don't know. And let me tell you what happened. People says, okay, let's go find the remains of the body. So you were boidik one of the three mounds, and you found nothing underneath it. So what do we say halachically? Well, I was boidik Aleph. I was not boidik Beis or Gimel. So now the doubt is only limited to Beis or Gimel. Aleph is good. Then you go ahead, and then you were boidik Mount Beis. Then you still can say, well, obviously now the tumah is in Gimel. If you would leave it at that, you would be good. But here the Chacham went ahead, and he searched under Mount Gimel, and he found nothing. Now you got a problem. He found nothing, so Rav Meir holds that we don't say maybe an animal came and dragged away the corpse. We don't say that. If you knew that there's a tumah and you went searching and you didn't find it, it means you didn't look well. So now all three become tummy again. Wow. So let's read and say Rashi. So Shnayim, if you search through two and you found under two toirim, so then you can say, yeah, heim toirim, bashlishi tummy. But if you went and you searched now the third, and all of them are tahor, says Rav Meir, now back to the square one. Kulam tameim, shahir Rav Meir, oimer kol davar shebecheskes tuma lo oilam ibetumasei, achi yivad locha tuma heicheni. The Chachamim say, if you looked under mound one, and you looked properly, so in that case, you were boidik bekarka v'choyfer achi yegel lasela. You went until you hit hard rock. It's very unlikely that the mace is under the hard rock. Or even if there isn't rocks at the bottom, if you have karka psula, you notice that this is land that no one ever dug into. So there's no mace underneath it. Now we're learning the first widest line in Rashi. The imlay matzah, toilim, v'oimim, you Chachamim say all three are tohirim. You say that ba'oirev unatala or ba'achbar unatala. Now guys, don't forget that over there we're talking about Tuma D'Oraisa. So there, Taka, you have a Rav Meir that's Machmer. Here again, Rashi holds, here Rav Meir will be lenient as well. Right, the first widest line in Rashi. The Gaba b'dikas chametz afilu Rav Meir amrinon achber achla b'dikas chametz zerabanan. You know, with this concept that I know that Tuma entered, you made a bedika, God did not give the Torah to Malachi Asharis. And Yada Inish Benafshe. I mean, if you made a very bad bedika, we're not applying this halacha. But if I feel I made a bedika chametz and I found nothing, here even Rav Meir will be minded, you don't have to search a third time. Beautiful. Back now to the next case, to the sixth case. Oh, ubadak va'ashkach. You went into your house. You made the dikas chametz. Cheskas badak. There is a pile. There is a mouse. The mouse takes chametz. You see the mouse run into your house. You go look for chametz and you find chametz. So what's the problem? Still, there's a problem. What's the problem? Look inside the Rashi. Two lines in the widest lines. But you don't know. Maybe this is the one that the mouse brought in. Maybe this is not the one that the mouse brought in. Certain people have these phobias, right? Did you clean your hands good enough? Clean your hands again. So Mela, you saw chametz going in there. You were baidik and you found, do you have to worry that there's what you found was not what the mouse brought in? So the Gemara says, fine, we have that already, we have a precedent. That's the machloikas Rabbi and Ashbag. Oh, the Tanya. Sada shenever b'kever. It's mamish the same case. There was a field. Everyone knows that there's a cave over here. There's for sure someone buried in this field. We just don't know where it's buried. We don't know its location. Now, a field meaning in a place that is private property. What's negea here is that you don't have many people wandering in there. So for the negea, safek tuma, b'reshus harabim, b'reshus hayachid, it's considered the reshus hayachid. So therefore, no one debates. Hanichnas l'teicha tamim. However, what happens if someone found a body buried underground? It's not that you searched the whole field, but you found a body underground. Can you say, oh, what I found, that was the kever? Nimsa b'kever, so we can say, That's the first opinion. That's the Tanach. That's Rabbi. That hanichnas l'toich hatar. Sha'ani yomer kevet she'avad hu kevet she'nimsa. Divrei Rabbi. Let me go back to our case over here. A mouse goes into the house with chametz, and you find chametz. I think the question is, do you have to search the remaining of the house? That's the question. Do you have to search for the remaining of the house? Here you can argue, if you search the remaining of the house, no one is going to say search it again. But who says that what you found was from the mouse? Mamish, like over here, you found the caver. Rabbi says, yeah, that's the caver. That now you found the lost caver. Zajac says, no, you have to be binding the entire field. And therefore, over here, the Zalbazar, what's the same thing over here? According to the Rashbag, you can only know that your house is baduk when you made the entire house was searched again. It lost the cheskas baduk when the mouse ran in there. You only searched half the house, a quarter of the house, 90% of the house. You found chametz, you got to do the remainder. That's the machlek. It's beautiful. Next case. This is gavaksen abort. You set out 9 pieces. We're not speaking about the way we spread it out. You know that in one location there were 9 pieces, and now in that location you find 10. Now, what does that mean? You can argue that you found everything that you left and not another one. Or you can argue the fact that you found 10 and you remember you left 9, it means what you found is b'chlal na, what you left. All of the 9 is someplace else. And that is the pluk of the Rabbi V'Rabbanan. And where do we have this machlokes? We have this in Masechtas Beya. We have this, it's a Tosefta, the Tanya. Hiniach mana. Mana means meiser sheni money. In the amount of 100, 1 mana. And you find in the same place where you left 1 mana, you find 2. Now you don't recall, did I place in this same drawer another mana of meiser sheni or not? So Rabbi holds that we have to presume, right, that it says, look inside the Rashi, 4 lines under the Gemara, we say that the mana that you left is the mana that's here. The additional mana is chulin money. What happens if you have meiser sheni money and chulin money mixed together? Doesn't really ruin it for you. It doesn't oblige you to take all of it and to use it only in Yerushalayim, only for food items. So Rashi gives the Eitzah, bring yet another mana and say that one of these 2 manas are meiser sheni, let it be transferred to the mana that I have in my hand, says Rashi, Gavaldik. And then you limit, now you're back to 1 mana that is, is meiser sheni, and now everything in the drawer is redeemed, but you have to do that step. What's the other side? However, Rashbag, where are we up to a minute? However, why do we say Hakol Chulin? Look inside the Rashi, 3 lines at the bottom of the Amid. Shahamonim natal that people don't mix Chulin with meiser sheni. You remember you put 1 mana of meiser sheni. If you find 2 mana, for sure you remove the mana before. Now you don't know where that is, but what you found right now, for sure it's Chulin. Now let's bring it back over here. We're continuing Rashi 3 lines before the bottom of the page. The Gabi Chametz Nami, this is a machlokes. L'Rabbanan, what do we say? Hatesh hiniach enam kan, because you found 10. If what you found is not what you left, then we say it's b'chlal not, there's no shaykhis. And now you have to search through the entire house. But 1 second, I remember leaving the 9 over here. Yeah, but maybe an animal dragged it from here to there. Go look for the whole house. The 10 that you found right now, where did it come from? This says Rashi, another person left it there. However, according to Rabbi, he doesn't even have to talk it out. We say no. We say that the 10 in the, Yesh B'Chaim Simon, the 10 has in it 9. The 9 was the 9 that you left. On top of that, some Chacham left another one. Fine. Now you got rid of it. Now the Gemara asks the case in reverse. Back in the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom. You left 10 and you find 9. So right, look in that Tosefta. The Tanya, going back to meiser sheni and chulin. You left 2 mana of meiser sheni money and you find a mana. So we say mana munach mana mutal. We assume that the mana that you found is from the original meiser sheni money, and that's it. That's the words of Rabbi. The Chachamim oimrim hakol chulin. People don't separate collection of Ma'aser Sheni money. If you left 2 mana, then what you found is Bechlal not the Ma'aser Sheni money. Someone has removed both of them, or you removed it and you forgot it. So let's bring it back over here. According to Rabbi, you need to search for how much? For 1 piece, right? You left 10, you found 9. We can say the 9 that I found is from the 10. All I'm looking for is for 1. Now, if you find the 1, what happens now? That was the machlokes we learned before, between in the Zajac Kevin. Go back. When you find the 1, can you stop doing the bedika, or do you have to still be binding for the rest of the house? But according to the Chachamim, you have to search for 10 pieces, because you left 10. The very fact that you found 9 is a raya that it's b'chlal not from the 10 that you left. I heard a Gavaldik story when I was younger, that there was a person that found a wallet, and he goes back and someone gives a siman, and he found $1,000 in the wallet. The balabas, the person who gave the siman, tells the Rav, listen, thank you for returning the wallet, but the wallet really had it $2,000. Give me back the second 1,000 that you stole. The finder says, I only found 1,000. The loser says, I lost 2,000. The Rav paskin that the finder keeps all of it. Based on this, he says, let's believe everyone. The loser lost 2,000. The fact that he found 1,000, that in itself is a raya that what he found is not what he lost. None of it is from the original person. Gavaldik. Because you found less than what was left. That's the sheet of the Chachamim. Then what was left is Bechlal not here. Search for old hand. Daf Yud Amud Beis. Next case. Someone schlepped the chametz from here to there. What do we do now? Pelukta the Rashbag v'Rabbanan. What's the machlokes Rashbag and Rabbanan? The Tanya kardem shavu v'bayis. X that you know I placed an X and it's lost. Says the Chachamim, the entire house is tamei. Oy gewalt. Entire house means all of the kalim in the house are tamei. Why? Because I could rely on my memory. I put it here. Lost means someone entered my house. If someone had the chutzpah to enter my house, which means he's a ganef, he doesn't care about the dinim of Torah, then we can presume that first of all he was tamei, and not only that if he was stealing my axe, he looked for other kalim. He left it because he didn't want it. But we assume that he touched the other kalim. It's a very stretch, but again, it's a suffering tamei b'reshus hayachid. Then we say all of the kalim the bayis are tamei. Sha'ani yomer adam talim nichnas l'sham unatali. Natali means not only is he the one that took the axe, but he touched the other kalim as well. That's a big chumer. Rashbag says no. Habayis tar. Sha'ani yomer that you think you lost it. Your memory is going. You lent it to someone else. Hishila le'achar. You loaned it to someone and you forgot about it. Or shenatalim is of Yezu v'iniach was always zechar. Or you moved it from one corner to the other and you forgot. Now, moving it from one corner to the other would only go on a case that I claim, I remember I left that axe in the dining room, and now I found it in the living room. So then it doesn't mean that someone else was in your house and they moved it, and therefore there's this chumrah that we're matama all the kalim shavabayis, or did you? But who mentioned? So the Gemara interrupts, Zavisman dechar shemei. So we clarify the Brais is indeed speaking about 2 cases that are similar. So then the din again in machlokes tanoim, habayis tamei because ani oimer. That's the chachamim. That's a huge chumrah. That adam tamei nichnas l'sham notalei. Someone is a thief. If a thief entered your house in the times that we are practicing the laws of tum and tara, all the kalim are tamei because he went through your stuff. Or the Baraisa spoke about another case. If you left your axe b'zavi yazu and you found it b'zavi acheres, so the chachamim also say the whole house is tamei. Because if you don't remember that you moved it, someone else moved it. And on both of these cases, the Rashbag argues, the Rashbag says, Habai is tahor. No one entered your house, or you moved it and you forgot. Okay, so let's go back. Let's bring it back over here. Let's think. So according to the Rashbag, that we say that you moved, it was moved by the owner. If it was moved by the owner, then when you find your chametz, you can say, that's your chametz. You moved it. But according to the Chachamim, we're not going to say that I got offended. We're going to say that an animal moved it. Now, the moment an animal moved it, now what? So that's the very important case we learned on Amud Aleph of Sada Shirim Seva Kever. Now what? Even if you found it B'Zaviyas Acheres, according to the Rashbag, not here, according to the Rashbag and Sada Shirim Seva Kever, you can't say, I found it. Now you have to look for the whole house. Once we ascertain that a mouse moved something, how do you know that what you found is what the mouse moved? Just like by the Sada, just because you found the Kever, you can't say, this is the lost grave. Maybe not. You have to look through the whole house again. That will be the question over here. Okay. Amar Rava. Rava is also going to be introducing beautiful cases, all beginning with a house that's already becheskas baduk. Achbon nichnas v'kikar b'fiv. A mouse goes into the house with a piece of bread in its mouth, and the nichnas achrov, and you the balabas, you run into the house right afterwards. Now, there is, in many of the Achronim speaking out, that what happened is also time-related. It should not contradict some of the cases that we learned above, or one of the cases that we learned above. You run in, and right away, you find pirurim. I know pirurim means crumbs, but let me tell you what it means. It means that you find so much crumbs that it could mamish be that entire bread, it's enough crumbs that you can reconstruct the loaf of bread with. You don't see the mouse. The bread is not the way you saw it. The mouse ran in there with the whole bread. Now you find perurim that could be the whole bread. Nevertheless, says Rava, tzarich b'dika. Why can't you blame the perurim on the bread? You found it. You found the bread. Again, even if you found the bread, according to the Sadash and Nevad Bakever, you'll have to look for the rest. This is on the Shita that says that when you find the problem, you can say this was it. You can't even say this was it. Look, Alma. Why? Because since the nature of a mouse is not to fabrekel a bread, so therefore we have to say there's enough chance, even though B'dikas Chametz is midrabanan, that the crumbs that you found were there before. I checked the house, you overlooked it. And the bread of the mouse is out somewhere. Go zuch, go find that bread. And because of the nature of an achbar. So let's take it to the next. And therefore, if a child runs in the house, he's crawling around. You are baidik a house and you see him running in there, crawling in there, the nichnas with the bread in his hand. And you run right afterwards in there. And the right afterwards in there would mean that even according to the Shita that says by Sada Shenevad Bakever that you have to look for the whole field, here, if you find it right away, if you can blame it on this is it, then you don't have to be boidik the rest. You find Perudim, ain't tzarich b'dika. Because that's the nature of children, that they take something and they crumb it out, they make it into crumbs. So if you find it right away, according to many opinions, even according to the Shita that says that by Sada Shenevad Bakever, you have to look in the whole Sada, here you find it right away. You go, this is it. It was whole and now it's crumbed. Yeah, the baby made it into crumbs. However, das is clear. But by Rabbi, Achbar runs into the house with a piece of bread in his mouth. And you see the Achbar another mouse, or maybe the same mouse. A mouse runs in and a mouse runs out. Mahum. Do we say Hainu Haida all? This is the same mouse, and the Hainu Haida Nafak, the same one that entered, the same one that left, same one that entered and that left. Yinachamol says Tosfos. What about the Rashbag that says that Sadash and Bakever? You can't say this is it. So Tosfos says here it's different. Here Raglayim Ladavar that this is it, because here the bread is in the mouth of the mouse. So it looks like it's the same one. He entered with bread in its mouth and it left with bread in its mouth. And here again, Tosfos says, even according to Rabbi that says that you always say that the one that you found by the kever shenevad b'sada is hu shenimsa, hu shenevad. Here it's different. Here it's different. Here we don't say so. A kever is something stationary. Mice is freilach. There's many mice. There's mice schlepp around food. Lav dafka, you can say that the same mouse that entered is maybe it's another mouse. Now, im tim saloimer hainu haida al hainu haida nafak. I want to make a quick pause and remember a certain kloli hashas over here, which is that halacha ki imtim salaymer. And you see over here, if you use, it's good to use the letters of the A mishpat and mitzvah to see what the halacha is, because here in the Gemara, at the end of all this will be a big teiku, but the teiku will go only on the last question. whenever there's a boya, and then the Gemara says, Im Tim Soleimer, one side, I have another question. That is the way Ravina and Avashi are saying that they determined that this is the halacha. We say, Hainu Haida Al, Hainu Haida Nafak. Now, there's exceptions. If you live in a place that's infested with rodents, it might be different, but then this is the case over here. What happens if it's a different color mouse? How great is this? You see a white mouse entering, and then you see a black mouse exiting. Even if normally you can say, Hainu Haida Al, Hainu Haida Nafak, here you have a kasha mouse. It's a different mouse. It's a different mouse, a different color. Oidilma, it's a different color, it's a different mouse, but it's the same bread. The black mouse knocked out the white mouse, and it took the bread. Oidilma, armuye armemine. Armuye means it get knocked. That one mouse, the black mouse is scarier. The black mouse hurt the white mouse, and it took the bread. Maybe you can still say it's the same bread. We're not going to say that. I have another question. A mouse enters, but a weasel exits. Looks like it's the same bread, but here's a chaim. So mice don't fight with each other. But here we say, and therefore, again, based on the beginning in Tim Soleimer, that we have the right to say that Hainu Haida Ol, Hainu Haida Nafak, so we'll say the same thing over here. And I'll prove it to you that it's not the same bread. Because if the weasel would have met this mouse, what you think weasels only like bread? You think the weasel will only steal the bread? The weasel would steal the whole mouse himself. The weasel should have had in its mouth the bread and the achbar. The achbar should have been in its mouth. Guys, we're already up to Chad Gadya. Verstehst what's going on over here? So the chulda here is eating up the achbar. Now, Tim Soleimer, and this is the halacha. You see the letter Vav that Im is the ma'achbar shekalte. Then achbar b'fiyo have a mishtakach is a raya that it's not the same one. Yes, you have to do b'dikas chametz again. I have another question. Achbar nichnas v'kika b'fiv. The chulda yoitzer, and the chulda goes out, and what's in the mouth of the chulda? The mouse and the bread. But it's not that the bread is in the mouth of the mouse and the mouse is in the mouth of the achbar. The chulda has in one side of the mouse of his mouth the achbar, and on the other side the bread. Chulda yoitzer the kicker, the achbar b'fi chulda mao. Hachavade ihuhu. Das is das. I don't know. The Nino. Then what should have happened was, like we just mentioned, you should have had the bread in the mouth of the mouse and the mouse in the mouth of the chulda. Kikar b'fi achbar mishtaka chave. Kikar b'fi achbar mishtaka chave ishtakucha. You should have found the bread still in the mouth of the dead mouse. But maybe not. That when the chulda attacked the mouse, Mishum biasusa, because of the fear that the mouse had, the bread fell out of the mouth of the mouse, and now the chulda chabdoth. On this final question, we say tekum. How great is that? Now, 1 second. Now let's. There is something alpi pnimis or yanim how mice represent some sort of unholy forces, which is certainly why we're using the achbar. The achbar is a non-good koyach, and the achbar they bring chametz. They're troublemakers. Okay, boy, Rav asks Rav, Kikar b'shmei kairam. No more achbarim. You made b'dikas chametz. You know that there's chametz high up, right on a ceiling beam. Without a ladder, you can't get to it. You know it's there, but nachamal, you did bittul. Bittul is enough. You only have to do b'dika because you might eat it. How can you eat it? You're going to make an effort? That's already a big stretch. This is on the night of b'dikas chametz. Or you don't have to. Right? So when we learned in the first Mishnah that you only have to do b'dika in a place where you put chametz in, that's if you don't know if there's chametz there. Here you know there's chametz there. Do you have to go get it? Right, the first medium-sized line, you don't have to go get a ladder because given the it's not going to walk down the beam from itself. And therefore, why do you have to do b'dika? That's the words that Tosfos quotes on Daf Beis. When Rashi says b'dika is because of Aliyah Matzo, Tosfos says no. Once you did bittul, it's only midrabanan. It's not going to walk down. You're never going to eat it. Something that's up on high, you can always fall down low. Zimnan the nafal v'asil michlei. Now, the im tim sulayman, again, this is the halacha, that zimnan the nafal v'asil michlei. That's because something that's high can fall low, but something that's low already fell, fallen in Yiddish. What about kicker b'boyer? It's a boyer that normally you don't go to. You know there's a piece of bread down there in a ditch. Do you have to get a ladder to bring it up? Something can fall down, but nothing falls up, sadly. Up is an avoida. No, maybe you will go down. Zinden the nachas, you might have to go down to the bar to do something of your personal needs, and then you'll meet the piece of kikar and you'll forget and im tim solem zilman the nachis litzarche v'asel michlei, and therefore you have to go and be boydik and get a ladder and get the chametz out of the bar. But that's at least because it's easy for you to go into the bar. What happens if kikar b'fi nachash? There's a nachash. The nachash lives in your house, and in the mouth of the nachash there's a kikar. So asks to go, what's the boy, the final boy? It's Tzarech Chabor. Chabor is a Nate Charmer. Chaver, right? We have in the pasuk. Tzarech Chabor lohoitzi. Do you have to hire a snake charmer? Or you ain't a tzarech. Why? 1 second. Why not? Because begufay atrichur abanan. Maybe you have to be boydikit yourself, but the atrichur here you have to hire someone. To hire someone you don't need to do it. Hold on. Ask Shloishes, what are you talking about? We learned on the Daladam days. Right? Remember, you rented a house, it was Cheskas Baduk, then you discover you want to cry Mekachtos. So what did the Gemara tell us? The Nichalele Inish Leva Mitzvah. So who cares if you have to spend money? Didn't we learn that people love spending money for mitzvahs? So Tosfos says, hold on. Over there was chametz in your house. Here it's in the mouth of a snake. How do you know the snake is going to stay here for Pesach? The snake can take the chametz out, says Tosfos, the snake can eat it up. So together with that, you still have to spend money. Maybe ad kadei kach not. And on this final question, Teiko, the question is standing. However, we have time, so let's start with the new Mishnah. We already quoted this Mishnah. Again, the Havamina is that in behemshach to the first Mishnah, Daf Beis, that boitkin oir la arba asar boitkin es hachametz la oir aner. On that says the Tana Rabbi Yehuda. Again, the Havamina, you have to do 3 b'dikas chametzim 3 times. Boitkin oir yudalit and ubi yudalit shachris. And ubishas habir at the time of the disposal, which is during the 6th hour. The Chachamim know that you don't have to do it during these 3 times. You got to do it once. However, they also agree that if you did not do it in its ideal time, then you have a nishdaken farfalon time to make it up. If leibadik or yudalit, then you can be boidik in the morning. And again, if you were not boidik in the morning, then you can be boidikit betoich hamoyed. I know that Rashi teaches moyed as shas habir. Others argue why did they change their expression? But we're going to go with Rashi. Be boidikit during the appointed time to remove the chametz. That's the 6th hour. That's the same bishas habir of Rabbi Yehuda l'shitas Rashi. And then the Chachamim add something. What happens if leibadik betoich hamoyed? You didn't do b'dikas chametz. It's already afternoon. It's already bismani surah. Still, yivdoik la'achar hamoyed. Make bedika. And we'll see, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with that. We'll explain that in the Gemara. Now we're learning another din. After bedikas chametz, ideally the night of, we don't really get rid of all of our chametz because we want to eat supper, we want to eat breakfast. Right now, our minig is taka to follow the Ramah. We have the 10 pieces. So we have chametz in our house. So the Mishnah says that Omashim Meshayr, anything chametz that you have after the bedika, make sure, Yanachenu B'tzino, put it away in a secure, private place. Why? As we began the whole suk of Sveikas, because if you will see an achvar going into that and schlepping it around, then for sure, you got yourself a real problem. Says the Gemara, my comment that Rabbi Yehuda, based on the Havamina, that you have to make bedika 3 times. So we have like this, Rav Chizda and Rabba Bar Rav Huna, both of them said, based on their erroneous initial understanding, the Havamina understanding, Keneged Sholish Hashbasli Shabbatayda, the Torah 3 times mentions the mitzvah of eliminating it. Sometimes implicitly, sometimes explicitly, but it's mentioned 3 times. You have the pasuk in boy, Lo Yerol Chametz, the Lo Yerol Chasoir. Well, if you can't see it, you have to get rid of it. Number 2, Shivas Yamim Soir Lo Yamatzeh, it can't be found. Again, it can't be found, you got to get rid of it. And then the explicit pasuk, Ach Vayem Arishaim, Tashbisu eliminates army batechem. That I will do it 3 times. Says the Gemara, that's not what he means. Masav Rabbi Yosef, I have a braisa. The braisa implies otherwise. Rabbi Yehuda Omer kol shalei badik b'shleisha parakam alalu shuvein abaydik. That Rabbi Yehuda is emphasizing. He's emphasizing that not like you, the Chachamim, say that if you were not boidik it until the Zman HaMoyed on the 6th hour, you should do it later, even inside the Zman Isur. Don't do it after the Zman Isur comes. Don't even go there. Don't even search for it. It's mashma. It's not clear. It's mashma that Rabbi Yehuda's argument with the Chachamim is only, could you do b'dikas chametz when you are already in the Zman Isura? Alma b'mikan be'elu chudapligi. Now you can counter. You can say Rabbi Yehuda has 2 arguments. Aleph, be boidikit 3 times, and he doesn't agree with the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda says, don't do bedika bismani surah. Just let it be. So now we have another version that makes the kasha clearly even stronger. Marzutra masni hachi. His version was that Rabbi Yosef brought another brayso that writes clearly that we misunderstood Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer kol shalei badak be'echad nishloisha prakam alalu shuv eino boidik. Clearly. Although we see that the only argument between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim is the shuv eino boidik or the pligi. Correct? But you only are boidik it once, either at night, like the Chachamim. If not at night, do it in the morning. If not in the morning, do it up until the 6th hour, including the 6th hour. After that, that's the machloikas. That's the machloikas. And indeed, Ella, the Gemara clarifies, Rabbi Yehuda Nami, im loy badaka amar. Not don't do it 3 times, do it 1 time, ideal oil lava asad. If you didn't do it, you can make it up, do it in the morning. If you didn't do it in the morning, do it up until either Shas Biur or, according to Rashi, Lashon of the Chachamim here, B'toich HaMoyed. La'achar HaMoyed, Bismani Surah, that's the argument. And what's the argument? That's Rebbe Yehuda, that Mekami Surah in, Basiri Surah Loi. Why shouldn't you do B'dika? Because if it's already in the Zman of the Isur, again, why are we doing B'dika? You already eliminated it with Bittul. You are doing B'dika, Dilma Asi Lamechle. Why are you going into a problem? Don't find Chametz. Dilma Asi Lamechle. You might find it and eat it. And the Chachamim hold that while you are busy being Boided Chametz, at that time, we're not worried that way goes in. In Chassidus, we have this correlation between Zman and Makim. So if we have this argument whether Bismani Suri you can be Boided Chametz, just the story that the Rebbe brings in the first Basa Lagani, right? What was the Maisa that the Rebbe Marash was Avos Yisrael, that he went to Paris with all the details, that he went into a place where there was a casino and he rented a room, and the Rebbe Marash, he walked in the casino and he sat down next to a Yid who didn't necessarily look like a Yid, and he tells him in Yiddish, Yungaman, Yayin Nesach is metamtam aleva amoyach. And he walked out of there, and that mamish transformed that Jew with the whole Arichos HaSipur. Now, the Rebbe can walk into a casino and chapa Yid that's connected to Chametz and chap him out, be boidik to Chametz. Can I walk in there? Can you walk in there to Mefsoyim? That's really the machlokes here. Lav dafka. I was told that once in Brinoa, Rabbi Reichik told me that Bachrim went to a very famous resort to do Mefsoyim, and they got so many tefillins, and they wrote a duch to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe responded, who gave them Reshus B'chlal to go there? In other words, that's the question. If it's b'makim surah or bismani surah, there's a machlokes whether you can go there to be boidik to chametz, because maybe God forbid, the Chachamim say no. If you're going there to be boidik chametz, then you'll be successful in getting rid of the chametz. God willing, to be continued.
Chazak Baruch.
Good chavra. Gewaldik.
Thank you.
Rabbi, I'm going to use this